Yeah.
There you go. Um,
Sweet.
I think the whiteboards work again. I was able to use them in a class recently, which was
Oh,
nice.
cool. Yeah, I was going to tell you that as soon as I sat down to sign in, I got hit with the multiple Zoom updates. So waiting, and who knows what they fucked up this time.
No, I was, I used them to teach a couple classes and it was just unusable for a little while. Well, no, it's still
Ugh.
giving me this newer version, which I don't know.
Okay. I mean,
No, or is
I
that
can
the older
see it.
version? Yeah, there it goes. Okay, if you can see it, that's good. I actually,
Yeah.
I didn't know if you might want the outro for this or not, so I just put it there. So
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I just, it
They're
had a
both
cool
good.
quote, that sounded very Trekkie, and the children of yesterday heirs of tomorrow. Makes me think of
Yeah.
what's
Yep.
the DS9
Yep.
episode?
Yeah. It's good stuff.
That crossed my mind. I guess you're in a timeline, so we should probably jump on into it.
Yeah, I've got my notes done for tonight, but now I've also got to write notes for mission log tomorrow, so we can get that one out of the way too. But yes, crazy couple of days. I look forward to sleeping late Wednesday. Mhm.
No, we've just been getting hit with like just weird weather chop where it hasn't gotten really hot yet, but I was like wearing a jacket yesterday. I'm like, it's June. What's going on?
Yeah,
I don't wear jackets in
yeah,
June. I
yeah,
wear a
yeah.
long sleeve shirt to work today. I don't do that in June. So what's going on? Okay, here we go. Welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's where we dive into the past of all the episodes of The Twilight Zone and beyond. I think I put too many words in that phrase anyway. This is Matt here as usual. Coming back is John Champion from the Mission Log podcast. Howdy.
Hey, really good to be here, and thanks for letting me pick cool episodes to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. Just for the inside baseball, I just got a message from Luke saying, why didn't you invite me for miniature? I'm a toy man. I have toys in my house. I'm like, well, I did. You know what? I didn't actually know what the episode was because
Yeah.
the only one of these I'd seen before getting the set of the hour long. I mean, is next week's the parallel I'd seen before. Everything else is new to me, so
Oh, okay,
kind of
cool,
fun.
nice.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
and actually, since you have an acting background, I am curious. In season four, I
yeah.
don't know how chronologically you have or have not watched it, but it
It's
seems
been
to
a
be
while.
it seems like a pretty weird clash between like old Hollywood and new Hollywood acting styles, like from week to week.
Yeah, I think they're doing that kind of maybe a Love Boat took a tip from this. You get people at the ascendance of their careers and people at the descendants of their careers. So there's maybe
Right.
a clash of acting style, probably a clash of egos too. Um, yeah, no, that's interesting. Boy, now that you point it out, there are very naturalistic performances like what we see today in this episode, but then there are those that are just really over the top. I mean, speaking of Twilight Zone, speaking of time travel, people at different stages of their careers. I mean, we did, oh,
Was that
time
Buster
travel.
Keaton?
Yeah, Buster Keaton. That's the name I was looking for. Yeah, yeah.
Russell
And when you
Johnson time traveled a few times.
yeah, but Buster Keaton, when you get to see that episode and his performing for a TV camera, but lifting his style from his silent days, a lot of broad physical comedy. It's it doesn't really fit for modern TV, but at least they played it up in a way that he was so out of his own element that it worked.
Yeah, in this episode, I guess I'll do the trivia in a minute, but
Yeah,
what's the feller's name? Uh,
our lead,
Dana
Paul,
Andrews.
Dan
Dana
Andrews.
Andrews
Yeah.
was, I'll mention he's a film noir guy, and he's kind of got this 40s style of hard-boiled acting, which is kind of cool compared
Well,
to,
it really mutes him. Yeah, and
right.
especially when you see the other people around him. Yeah.
But then Dennis Hopper and Robert Duvall put in such kind of modern performances in their Twilight Zone. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's
yeah.
true.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
fun. It's an anthology show. You can do that. I mean, if it was
Yeah.
a episodic or serialized thing, it would be weird. But in this case, it
Exactly.
works because it's like, okay, new
Right.
week, new tone.
Right. Right.
Speaking of that trivia, I will get into that. It's not so long today. It's one of those things where it's like there's so many actors. So I just
Yeah.
focused on three. And
Cool.
also because as I was looking through, I was like, a lot of these people don't really have much interesting background. So if I had found a bunch of interesting backgrounds, I would have rambled on, but I did not. Original air date was March 7th, 1963. The script is by Rod Serling. Dana Andrews played Paul Driscoll. He was a film noir leading man in the 1940s, with Laura and the Best Years of Our Lives standing out as some notable flicks he's featured in. His career was still kicking in the 60s, but he had winded down to TV guest spots like this one, just as you said, the Love Boat um,
Yeah.
formula.
Yeah.
Abigail Sloane was Patricia Breslin. We've already seen her in The Zone, hanging out with Shatner in Nick of Time. She had already had notable TV recurring roles in The People's Choice in the 50s, and later in the 60s would appear in that capacity on Peyton Place. Harvey
Oh,
was,
wait.
oh,
But before you move on,
oh,
though,
yep.
yeah. She was in the William Castle film Homicidal, which was a Psycho ripoff, starring Glenn Corbett. By the way, there's
Ooh.
a, Star Trek connection for you. But I look for as cheap and weird as the William Castle movies are, and for as cheap and weird as many of the Psycho knockoffs are, Homicidal is great. So I did not recognize her when I watched this episode, but then when I looked her up later, I was like, oh, she's the lady from that. So good movie. Yeah.
Oh, you're taking my trivia pride away. Next week I will note a William Castle feature. I'm
Oh,
like, oh no,
good.
I got it next week,
Nice.
but I missed it this week. Ah.
Oh no.
That will be someone featured in Macabre.
Cool.
Harvey was Robert F. Simon. Simon was one of those Broadway to TV character actors and showed up on half the shows made from 1955 to 1975. There wasn't even like a point in like starting to list them. I saw
No.
MASH in there. I saw Perry Mason in there. I saw Ed Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea was in there. I'm like
Oh
everything I can think of,
man.
it's on this guy's list. So just, he was working every week in the 60s in Hollywood, I
Wait,
guess.
I just looked him up, okay, because I had not looked him up before, and I see that he was in the original Operation Petticoat with Tony Curtis and Cary Grant. And I just watched that not too long ago, so I'm surprised I did recognize him from that. And he was in the '70s live action Amazing Spider-Man series. Which was not good at all, but but I remember watching that religiously as a kid because it was one of the only live action superhero shows you could get. So apparently he was in that too.
No, on my film podcast a few years ago, when one of the Spider-Men were coming out, we were trying to be cheeky. We went back and did one of those films. Like they
Right.
compiled the episodes into films. And it was
Yes.
it was the
Yeah.
one where he goes to Hong Kong, I think. But yeah.
Nice.
I don't know. It's
Nice.
kind of fun to watch. I definitely have like, small child brain memories of it because I'm like, oh yeah, Peter Parker is like, what is he like he's like works at a TV station or something. He has a completely
Yeah.
different job
Yeah.
and it's weird. And but that I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
was my first, that and the Electric Company was my first exposures to Spider-Man. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah. No, same here. Yeah.
Uh Turning the dial completely, I guess back to the episode. I'll give you the prologue. Um
Oh, here we go.
if oh, did it save? Use whiteboard class. It's still there. Yay. Okay, Zoom did something nice for once.
For once, never to be seen again. All right, here we go. Exit 1 Paul Driscoll, a creature of the 20th century. He puts to a test a complicated theorem of space-time continuum, but he goes a step further, or tries to. Shortly, he will seek out 3 moments of the past in a desperate attempt to alter the present, one of the odd and fanciful functions in a shadowland known as the Twilight Zone.
All right. And
Mhm.
like I say, I put that there. If you want the epilogue, please tell me. We might get to it. Hey, maybe I'll read it. Sometimes I do that
Yeah,
at the end of
hey, that would be
episodes.
fun. I fully encourage you to do so.
An elephant in the room, I guess we've been noticing, especially in season 4, is there are a fair amount of episodes where you could arguably go, been there, done that before.
Yep.
I brought up Russell Johnson, where he goes to stop no science fiction. He just walks out of his door and ends up in 1865 Washington, right? So at
Yeah.
least he's not trying to make it happen, but then, does the same thing where he tries to foil the Lincoln assassination, but causes it instead, which they do get
Yeah.
that. Well, yeah, that's kind of this episode as well, 4
Yeah.
times in a row.
Well, so yeah, I mean, I was thinking that obviously time travel is going to be a perennial favorite of not just the Twilight Zone, but science fiction in general. Look how many times Star Trek goes back to the well with time travel because it's fun. It's relatable because we all have those desires or fantasies. Like the desire is, what if I could fix something in my life? The fantasy is, no, what if I could really fix the thing in my life and prevent it from ever happening? So there's a self-serving element to it that I think is part of its universal appeal. But the other thing that I really thought about here was one of my all-time favorite Twilight Zone episodes, Last Stop Willoughby, because even though that is not a time travel episode in the way that this is, there's not a machine, there's not a science fiction premise behind it. You and I talked about whether or not it was just the suicidal fantasy of this guy who was losing his mind, burned out on his life. Um, but just the idea that somebody would want to escape into the past and this very idealized past where it's, I believe they shot it in the same place, small town, this romanticized version of what the past would be like. Now, our lead in Last Stop Willoughby doesn't get to experience it
Or
that
does
we
he?
know of, or does he? Who goes into the Twilight Zone? Um, but as we learn here, the past is never quite what we dream it to be.
Yeah, that first shot is basically the same shot as entering Willoughby. So
Oh yeah.
I didn't do a director credit trivia mostly because he had a red name on Wiki and it was late at night. But
Mm.
I was like wondering
That's
if
your
that was
punishment for having a red link on Wiki. Yeah, yeah,
yes, exactly.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was like wondering if that was an intentional callback, though it's a different director. I
Yeah.
guess that's hard to do on TV though, because people don't have it like, stockpiled in their house like we do now on our computers or on discs or
Yeah, I
whatever.
mean,
So
it's been at least 3, if not going on 4 years since people last saw that. Because
right.
as I recall, that first season did not go into syndication while the show was still on the air.
Yeah, it is weird to think of how ephemeral TV was at the time. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just like in Back to the Future reruns. What's that?
yeah, yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
expect that. I think this does feature my favorite minimalist sci-fi set since The Obsolete Man. That
Oh,
that time
yeah.
machine room is just like that's got to be the best sci-fi set we've seen on this show.
Um, I love trying to think about the in-universe justification for things like that. Like, A, why would you need the string of lights, between the pedestal and the platform? And B, why would you need that huge of a discrepancy between the control panel and the platform where the time travel action takes place? Like you could say, oh, you have to have a tremendous amount of energy. It needs to be consolidated in one place. But yeah, but why would you put your target so far away? You know, like you're trying to come up with it in your head, but at the end of the day, it just looks cool and even causes for that very dramatic, first of all, the dramatic back and forth between the two, but then the dramatic kind of like step off the platform, like now I'm coming toward you, and now it's getting a little bit more serious when I address you away from this platform where I will be whisked away into the memory of time.
Yes. Of course, you could also say, why did I string Christmas lights in my apartment all year round in my 20s? But yeah,
Right. But you didn't do
why
it
am I
quite
not
like
doing it
that, I
now?
bet. That kind of that because yeah, that sort of V shape like gives you almost like a landing strip of like directionally this is where we're going.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of like a patio party for some reason.
Sure, yeah, hey, you do that too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first thought. But yeah, I also found it weird. His assistant like really doesn't seem into this. He's like, you shouldn't do this. Why are you doing this? Maybe hire a different assistant. I don't know.
I think he's been working with him for a very long time on this, I think. You know, over the course of however many years it took to build the time machine, you would think that this conversation would have already come up,
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe
you
it
know?
has, and he just hasn't listened because he seems pretty hell bent on doing this. So,
Right.
I guess that's fine. Um,
Yeah.
it also he also made me think a little bit about the super rich guy that invites all of his what's the name of the episode? It's a very rich Bond villain. It's Dr. No, where he invites all the people from his past he hates to try and convince them the world has ended. Like it seemed
Yeah.
like that kind of weird obsession with this guy. I guess it's
Yeah.
technically more altruistic here, but is screwing with the past ever altruistic, you know?
Right. Well, yeah. Yeah. That's the big question here. And he learns well, he doesn't he learns the lesson in his final trip, but in the previous trips, in the first three trips, he doesn't. Like I think it is altruistic, but he doesn't learn the lesson, until after that third trip.
I think he learns it intellectually, like he knows,
Yeah.
but emotionally he has not been able to learn it because in
Yeah.
Homeville he, goes about it again, right? He's
Right.
already seen like I guess okay, with Hitler he just fails and vanishes. The other places he the explosion propulses him through time. I'm kind of not sure why he gets to not end up trapped dead back in time or in a Nazi prison or something because he just kind of yeah.
It is weird. Like that's another in-universe thing where there's not a good explanation of how he ever gets back because he puts himself in these really precarious situations. And you think about it, he's in Hiroshima the day that, I mean, just literally an hour before the bomb goes off. That's when he starts his journey, right? And then
Well, he shows
he's
up 7 hours early and gets thrown into jail for 6 of those hours.
oh right, right, okay, there we go. Yeah, all right. So give
Still
him
a little
credit,
early though. Still cutting a little
Still,
close by any
yeah,
standard.
and then he's in Nazi Germany in 1939. Hitler came to power in 1933. So, you got a good 6 year window there that you could have made a better choice on
Kristallnacht
when
has
you're.
already happened. That wasn't a good night.
Yeah, exactly. And then with the Lusitania, he's there like what, the day before it gets, no, like the day of
Yeah.
that it
He's
gets
like,
hit
gonna
by the
change your course right now. When he tells the captain to change
yeah.
his course, it's already too late. He can change his
Yeah.
course, and the sub's finding him. They're not that far away.
Right. So I did keep wondering, okay, why do you put yourself in the worst possible place to try to affect a change in history? You need to be a little bit more creative, do something a little bit different. And at least with the Hitler one, he was trying to take action himself. Now, it raises the question of how he got the money to then get to Germany, get a gun, and get a hotel room in a hotel that is completely sold out because everybody is there to see the chancellor, right? So there are all these things you have to figure out how he actually got there. But then when he got there, he just needs to take the shot. And
Don't
he
answer
could
the
have,
door. Take
yeah,
the
yeah,
shot,
don't
then
answer.
answer the door.
Right, right, yeah. Because if you take the shot, then you theoretically have then changed history. So it could be one of those situations where the SS showing up at the door, they don't actually show up at the door because you took the shot, you ended it. Those things never happened. So paradox.
I do like the construction of the episode though that time is immutable, which they stick to. They just fudge it where how he travels back to the present. Um, I don't
That
know.
is true. Yeah,
As far
yeah,
as the money, I guess I'm willing to grant him Elon Musk powers of money and ill intentions. He might have that Doc Brown suitcase, just filled with every kind of currency that he'll possibly
right.
need.
Well, maybe that's the scene missing is that he actually went back in time to like 1840 and invested, in something we don't know about. So then in 1970 or 1907, no, sorry, 17 is when Lusitania went down. He could go collect it. Wait, I'm getting it wrong. 1915. I'm sorry. All right. It was built in 1907. So then he could collect. He could like show up at the bank like a Doc Brown thing, just 77 years later. Oh, I left myself this note here. Oh, look, the stock that I bought is now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So,
Send your Western Union telegram by way of Joe Flattery. Yeah, you can do that.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
I mean, when we did Walking Distance, that was a time travel episode with Marty, and now we've got like the scientists going back to 1888 to, hook up with
Yeah.
the school marm, So I'm
Yeah.
like, Spielberg and Zemeckis were watching this for sure. Oh, Bob Gale, he's watching this too, Like Back to the
Yeah,
Future 3,
yeah,
especially. This one, I just kept
yeah,
thinking of Back to the Future 3.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind of the same plot.
yeah, yeah. It kind of
Um,
is actually.
of course, her kids bite it, not herself in this case, because what was it? Mary Steenburgen was gonna be in a train crash or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she would have been the one who died. Yeah, yeah. I think, the problem with each of the sequences, except for the Nazi Germany sequence, because that's all about action, is that both with the Lusitania and with our first scene and with the last scene, it all comes down to like him having to convince people of an argument, and he's never going to win that. Like no matter what, he is never ever going to win the argument because he will always sound like a crazy person.
Right.
So yeah, yeah. So if you're an American in Hiroshima in 1945 trying to convince a policeman to do something, that is not going to work. And if you are in, small town, middle America in 1881, and you're trying to convince people to either, move a horse, or, or if you, I kind of wondered at first there, is he going to get on a train? He's going to go try to stop the assassination of Garfield? Like, what possible outcome to history would that have had, good or bad? Who knows? Um, but in each of those cases, he's trying to convince people to do or to not do something, and I'm like, that's yeah, that's a non-starter. You've
Well,
got nothing. Although he could have shown somebody the book. He
yeah.
did have that book that he brought back with him.
Well, let's say you've got your time machine, you've got your briefcase of multiple kinds of archaic
Yeah,
currency, and you go back
yeah,
to, oh, let's
and
go
a
a year
sniper
earlier.
sniper rifle.
Let's go
Yeah.
20 excuse me, let's go 1913. Why don't we just try and stop World War One? It was already pretty bad once the Americans showed up.
Right, right, right. You could have done that. You could have shown up in New York before the Lusitania set sail and either somehow surreptitiously change the course, or maybe sabotage the ship so it couldn't sail.
Or
Although
I
that,
mean,
yeah,
he seems like he's very sharp with history. So
yeah.
why isn't he going back to stop Franz Ferdinand from being assassinated? That would be a lot smarter.
Well, but see, and of course, this is the fun of an episode like this. It's like, okay, you think that by killing Hitler, you're doing something better. And of course, like that is a hard argument not to make, right? If you kill Hitler, you're doing something good for humanity and good for history. But we don't know what could have come out of that, positive or negative. We don't, all we know is just the history that we've got. Now, if he had prevented Archduke Franz Ferdinand from being killed, maybe that would have launched would have allowed in any part of Europe otherwise for some other horrible fascistic government to arise. We don't know. So maybe that was the thing that the world needed at that time, because something else worse would have occurred.
Yeah, the arms race and the treaties. It was a pressure
Mhm.
cooker, and what if it kept pressure cooking till someone made atomic bombs, and then we, let off World War One with atomic bombs, like straight out the gate. It was a
Well,
much worse
right.
situation.
Yeah, yeah. And if you kind of go with the theory that World War II was a continuation of World War One, it's like, okay, well, if you prevent World War One from happening, then maybe you are just allowing the worst war to happen over a longer period of time in the middle of the century. Who knows? Or maybe early, maybe it was one that started in the 20s and lasted for a couple of decades. Who knows? Yeah.
But
So
that's what I find interesting. Paul Driscoll does understand all of this intellectually.
but
After making a few mistakes, he learns by trial and error. Once he goes to Homeville, he has properly learned this, but emotionally he still can't do it. Once the president, he's like, "Ah, I guess I could, but I can eat it. I mean, I'm
yeah.
not pulling the trigger. But then when it's his
Yeah.
his new lady friend, obviously it's like, "Argh." And then goes about it the dumbest way as well, by trying to just accost the snake oil salesman until, yeah, unhitch your horses. It's like, that's unhinged, dude. I mean, that's unhitched and unhinged.
Yeah. What if you were much more kind of careful about it? Like, while everybody's around, or if he's got the guy's attention, what if you just made up something like, "Oh, I'm very light sensitive. I need to turn off this lantern while we talk."
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Or
even
just
though it's two
really,
o'clock in the afternoon and it's totally bright, you know.
yeah, make the snake oil salesman think he's about to just try and appeal to his salesmanship. It's like if you start talking to a Ferengi about his wares, he'll go on all day. Past 2 o'clock for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, exactly. Tell you what, I'll give you $1 for the bottle of snake oil. I'll give you $5 for that lantern because that is the coolest lantern I've ever seen. I want that. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
many other creative ways to get out of this.
Right. So okay, I'm taking 5 intellectual points for him for that. Um,
Yeah.
how about the quote? I'm calling it the Thanksgiving dinner scene, even though it was not Thanksgiving dinner, but where
I'm
let's go
thankful
straight to
for,
politics.
yeah, yeah, I'm thankful for colonialism and American imperialism.
Planting the flag everywhere. But let's say you plant the flag and leave it. We got an American flag on the moon, but
Sure,
we haven't really
sure.
done much with that property recently.
Yeah. That is such a strange and wonderful scene because I love that this episode was written by Rod Serling because you know that he's just unloading a whole lot of feelings about politics and history. And of course, he is a World War II veteran. So he's trying to kind of play this out on the page and on the screen here as well, like justifying the actions of these various governments. And like, yeah, we just went through the worst possible thing 20 years ago. But how do we justify how it played out? How do we justify our actions? Um, that scene at the dinner table where that just boorish, obnoxious guest is unloading his politics. It is, as you said, it's like the worst Thanksgiving where drunk right wing uncle shows up and just uninvitedly starts espousing his political views and expects other people to go along with it. But I love it's one of those things where again it's like audience fantasy fulfillment. Like I wish that I were the guy who could say something with the cool collected insight that Paul has in that scene because he's wonderful in his rebuttal. He's absolutely great, and it's the mic drop moment that he gets to walk away.
That's what I wrote in my note. Dinner table speech, mic drop. Yeah. Which
Yeah,
he
yeah.
literally does. Although I guess he doesn't show up for breakfast the next morning, does he? So I don't know
Right.
how many more meals with them he's gonna. Well, he's not because he goes back to the present. So
Right.
that was
But
it.
it did make it kind of made me think though, like in a pre-internet and pre-mass media period. Yeah, there are newspapers, but and telegrams are around, but it's not the kind of instant communication that you have when telephones and radio are predominant. Um, that kind of scene has to have played out very frequently, not with the mic drop from Paul. I'm sure that there were very few mic drops as eloquent as that. um, but people who get a little taste of current events, they've read a newspaper or two within the last few days, and then they show up and they've got nobody else to unload to. They've got nobody else to have a discussion with except for the people around the table at the boarding house because that's where you go. It's either that or the saloon. And the barkeep's probably going to throw people out of there if the politics get too heated.
Yeah. Oh, geez. I'll get to this in a moment, but
Hmm
yeah.
hmm
Uh, oh, and I'll explain why I just. Okay, I now I have to do it. Like I was just looking
Great.
at my notes where I'd written like scrofula, you know, like because I always joke about that when I was like in high school. Oh, he's probably got scrofula if someone was in his first school. So I really noticed it. I was just now wikiing scrofula. I was like, oh my God, I did not want to wiki scrofula. That's a
Oh
horrible
no.
skin condition.
Oh
Don't
no.
look up scrofula. It's
Don't get
bad.
it.
I should have been joking about it 20 years ago. Yeah.
Nobody wants that. Yeah.
Let's see, Darren. What I was going to say at the dinner table is the
Yeah.
perspective is interesting. I mean, 2024, let's see, as Americans, well, we've been kind of imperializing all over the world, or at least world policing for quite a while.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
1881, yeah, America still is like basically this tiny little podunk country, which just had a horrible civil war. So that would be on
Yeah.
everyone's mind for sure.
Yeah.
But all that wanting to plant, the manifest destiny screamed as loud as he can.
hmm
Um, that's just percolating right now. So America hasn't technically, taken these steps quite yet. We'll be heading off to
Yeah.
Cuba and Puerto Rico and places soon, but not yet, which is, I guess, why Paul Driscoll chose this time. But if he's going to live here, he's going to theoretically be living for 20 years and watch things get crappy again, which he figures out just in the 1881 setting. You know, he's
Yeah,
like,
in a couple of days he figures out. But it is an interesting time to choose because okay, at least by his logic, it is post-Civil War, so you've gotten past the worst of it, and I can get it that from about 1880 to about 1900. Well, let's just be generous and say anytime before World War One. Like that, there is kind of a weird sweet spot for what he wants. He wants this time where there is not a global war, where there's not weapons of mass destruction, where a small town life does still exist in many places. You could still get to a big city if you want to. Like you could get to Chicago, you could get to New York. Well, wait a minute, Chicago fire was 1881, I think. So
oh, he
maybe
should not
Chicago's
take
off the
wait
list.
wait a bit to take a trip. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, but you've got all of this available to you, and I'm kind of thinking of things in the range of like World's Fairs, right? So, British Empire is still one of the most powerful empires on the planet at that point in the 1880s. Victoria is queen by this time, and you're coming up on things like, well, the Chicago Exposition, 1893. So you're coming up on these times of like incredible industrial progress, and there really is this idea that we can accomplish anything through technology and just through sheer willpower. Like we can just do anything that we want. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but that is a prevailing attitude that then a guy like Paul lands in there and meets his horrible dinner companion who might just very well feel justified to say, well, we've got the money now, we've got the technical ingenuity. Why can't we just go all over the world and gobble up anything that the British haven't already taken? They'll be better off for it.
Which, yeah, I guess is sort of what happened in a way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's on,
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, it's interesting. Rod Serling wrote because he's putting his opinions into Driscoll's mouth, and the other guy is kind of like a walking, talking worst part of America over the past 100
Yeah.
years.
For real. For real.
I mean, yeah, if you want to go, how do you? I don't know how one experiences Infowars now, but I imagine you would hear rants like that, possibly.
Yeah. Right. Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Exactly.
Let's see if I have another observation or two before I get to. Yeah, again, I was sitting here in my notes just trying to figure out how he goes back to the present. Is he Billy Pilgriming, quantum leaping? I don't know.
Yeah, there's so much, and for the purpose of the story that's being told here, it's not that important. But I'm sure that you and I and a lot of other sci-fi fans are going to kind of walk through that mental exercise. What are the in-universe explanations for what happens? He's got to get clothes. He's got to get a place to stay. Like for a moment, there was this weird thing where he walks into the bar in 1881 and he gets a beer. The bartender says that'll be a nickel. And that's the first time that a price of anything has given him pause. And I'm like, well, first of all, the economics are different in the past. Second of all, you have been to the past now 3 times where you've had to pay for something somehow. Like, why would this nickel beer give you pause of anything else? Why would that kind of like stop you in your tracks and you have to think for a minute? Wait a minute, do I have a nickel? Oh, wait, yeah, I have a nickel. At least we didn't have a Christopher Reeve somewhere in time moment where he fishes into his pocket and finds a modern coin, and then that breaks the whole time travel illusion anyway.
Well, what my next note was what he does after that. Maybe he had maybe you have a little time sickness when you do this, because after he
Oh.
trips out about a nickel, what does he do? He takes a sip of his beer. He picks up a newspaper from another man's table,
Yeah,
starts
that guy
reading
is
it,
totally cool about it.
not finished, puts the newspaper back down, puts
Yeah.
his beer on top of the newspaper on the man's table, and then walks out of the restaurant.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
bizarre behavior.
It's really weird. Like I guess he figures that that other guy at the table must have been really drunk or just really nice somehow. But I kept thinking like, could I get away with that? Like, could I walk into a Starbucks, have a cup of coffee? There's somebody there at a table, reading a paper. Although good luck finding a newspaper today. But reading. Could I walk over there and just pick it up and look at it, put
Well,
it
some
back
some people
down?
don't respond. Like I teach kids in Japan now, but I used to teach
Uh-huh.
adults, and my coworkers and I would always have like this little like our personal little aristocrats joke where we would like think of the most horrible things you could do in a classroom, and then
Yeah.
the students just don't respond because
Right. Right.
there's
They're a
I
little
mean
nervous.
obviously there is a point where they would respond, but yeah, it's just like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know that was our little joke. We like just think of like the most inane situations to make a English conversation out of. We construct situations like you've turned on a TV, the world's ending, the bombs are on their way, everyone's
Yeah.
screaming outside, your friend walks in and asks what your favorite color is. What do you say? So when you
Exactly.
teach adults in Japan, you can do that. With kids, you can't. Yeah.
Sure. 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 Yeah, that was kind of a weird one. By the way, not just kind of the time sickness, but I also thought about here's another in-universe real thing is like adjusting to whatever food and drink you're going to have. Because in 1881, I believe this is pre-FDA, and beer was not particularly well regulated. In fact, not particularly good in most places. Here's another World's Fair reference. It took until 1893. That's where you get Pabst Blue Ribbon winning the blue ribbon at the Chicago World's Fair because it was clear, it was light, had very few impurities. So I'm thinking, all right, there are all these other beers that do not get the blue ribbon in the 12 years prior to that. Who knows what you're getting? Who knows what swill you're getting at some little, Midwest town
That's why you're
in
making your
1881.
moonshine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Apparently, my
Exactly.
dad once a year goes out to the Palmetto Distillery in South Carolina to buy official moonshine. So
Oh, wow.
he was
Wow.
saying, what was he telling me his new martini recipe was? It was like the regular amount of gin, a few ounces of dry vermouth, a few ounces of something else that was weird. Oh, he was putting like bourbon in there. Weird. That can't be right. Anyway, he's putting a little bit of the moonshine there too, and something with some color. So,
Oh my God.
I told him he needs to make a name for that because I don't know what that drink is.
Okay, let me just tell you right now that there is a bottle of moonshine that has been in my fridge for 12 years now because some my ex-girlfriend's uncle gave it to her or maybe to me. I don't know, but whatever. Regardless, it ended up in our kitchen and I don't know what the hell to do with it. So it's just sitting there. And maybe one day somebody will give me a recipe worthy of actually trying it. But I have had zero interest until now.
Okay, I got a much better iteration of that story where my friend's ex-girlfriend or girlfriend said who's anyway yeah, 50-year-old bottles of scotch from her parents' house because they didn't really drink it, just been in their liquor cabinet for like 50 years because it was like their
Oh,
parents
but
or something. And so Johnny Walker Black,
oh.
this is okay. After 50 years, it's really good.
Yeah, holy cow,
So,
man. That okay, that's
e-
cool. Mine is
even
not
Cuddy
so
Sark
cool.
was pretty good.
Yeah.
Give Cuddy Sark 50 years, not so bad.
Yeah, nice, nice.
I don't think any of them were single malt, so unfortunately, so that's a bummer.
Uh,
But what
oh well.
I mean, it's hey, I wasn't there 50 years ago to see that situation, so
Sure. Yeah, you don't know. You don't know. Could have been.
let's throw some questions on this. Who
Yeah.
in this episode goes into the Twilight Zone?
Oh man, I feel like everybody goes into the Twilight Zone. I feel like the assistant Harvey does not. He's just kind of the only like stable force here, and he sort of he sees the big picture and we're like, yeah, don't do this. I don't think this is a good idea. Paul definitely goes in the Twilight Zone, and I like your argument that he intellectually gets it, but emotionally it takes him a while to kind of clue in to the reality of what's going on. But I feel like everybody he encounters has a Twilight Zone moment. I mean, think about it. The Japanese policeman, I think if he survives, I think we're supposed to take away the idea that his wife and daughter don't. So if he survives, there's a weird Twilight Zone moment for him that, hey, this guy just came into my office, warned me about this horrible thing. I didn't listen to him, but he was right somehow because this just happened. Um, Captain of the Lusitania, definitely Twilight Zone moment because, hey, he got the warning, he heard about it, and he didn't do anything about it. And this guy knew incredible detail about what was about to happen.
Well, a moment now
Um,
he's dead in both cases, but
well, that's true. That's true. Yeah, yeah. Um, but for a split second, maybe he had a Twilight Zone moment. I don't know that the Nazi guards had a Twilight Zone moment, except that the guy they were after disappeared. Maybe the chambermaid.
yeah, she definitely
Maybe,
did because
yeah, yeah. I think that was a weird moment for her for sure. And then our poor Abigail, our
I was gonna
poor
put her deepest into the zone, to be honest.
yeah, I mean she's truly the most sympathetic character here, because not only does she truly I don't think their chemistry is like off the charts, but I think they have some really nice moments together, and you really buy kind of like the Mary Steenburgen character in Back to the Future 3. You buy that she's the smartest one in the room, and you also buy that, emotionally she's really invested in this, and she's probably more than anybody the one who would get it. She's the one who would get it if he just like if she could wrap her mind around all the things that are driving him, she might actually be the one who could help him, you know.
Although I did put the
But
note, did they just hook up and break up in the span of 3 minutes? And
three,
for the ones like they do have chemistry, but by the end, they're not really on good
yeah,
terms.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I think she's the one who experiences the most. Yeah, yeah. Because Paul, I think at the end of the day, Paul like just sort of gets to walk away from his experience. Like, oh, I did all these things. I learned a lesson. I know how it works, but I know that I can't do it again. Abigail has to live her whole life with this just weird sense of kind of like wonder and open-ended question, you know?
Also, 12 kids are now seriously injured.
They are, yeah. So she's got to live with that too. Yeah.
Right. So that
Yeah.
because I was yeah. I guess that is interesting. It's like we've said time's immutable, can't save the kids, but yeah, that does seem like the part where, he ekes something out. And I feel like a more modern version of the story would have him save the kids.
Yeah, I mean, Twilight Zone sometimes will surprise us with a happy ending, but a lot of the times it is this like fatalistic, you can't change the past, whatever. But if he had saved those kids, if everything had worked out in 1881, okay, then there is a version of this story where Paul just stays there and he's happy with his decision to stay there. Maybe he leaves notes on how not to build a time machine in the 1960s because he doesn't want anything to change again now that he's found his happy place, right? And we can be led to believe that no, 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 this is the correct course of events for history. Like the time that we're living in now, whether as an audience in 1963 watching this for the first time, or an audience in 2024 watching this story play out again, that no, that this is the timeline that is correct, where Paul ends up back in 1881 and lives his life, and that's okay.
He only gets to live 1 year of his life in 1881, though, right? I mean, realistically, or not realistically, because it's not realistic, but theoretically, he should be just looping. When it gets to New Year's 1982, he hits his time machine button or whatever he has again and goes back to the beginning of 1881 because he doesn't want another year.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. I mean, I think in any one of these cases, though, okay, so you can. By the way, I apologize because apparently at 5:30 in the afternoon, 5:20 is when the leaf blower guy shows up and just walks down the alley. So feel free to cut that out. Um, in any one of these situations, you still have to ask yourself, well, is it the right timeline, but by whose definition? Because Paul might be right. Paul might actually be right that, oh, okay, if we can only save the Lusitania, which, by the way, I think they still had munitions on board. That is still a great question of history about did the Germans target it because they knew that there were munitions on board. Um, if Lusitania had made it, is that actually the correct with big quotes? Is that the right course of events? We only know our timeline because it's the one we're living in. Who's to say that there isn't a different, more quote unquote correct timeline where some disastrous thing didn't happen, or maybe some other disastrous thing happened, but it had a better outcome?
That's why I'm saying he wants 1881. He does a year in Homeville. It's
Yeah.
reversed. Now he does somewhere in upstate New York or something. Next year does it again. Let's try North
Yeah.
Carolina this time. See how that goes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was thinking, well, gee, what would I want to do in my own past? It would be cool to relive, go back to 2004, my first year in Japan. Like the bubble had
Mm-hmm.
burst, but no one had noticed yet. So it's
Yeah.
like some of the pressure was off, but all the weird stuff was still around, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Good
it's
point.
like I want to do 2004 over and over again. That'd be fun.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. Although, I mean, well, within his own lifetime, of course, 1881 is not in his own lifetime. I mean, I could see spending a little bit of time there, but at the first sign of sickness, the first need for, a vaccine against a deadly disease or whatever,
You're
I
getting
want
a
no
case of
part of.
scrofula.
Yeah, scrofula. No, first sign of that, I'm heading right back to the 20th century. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think my 2004 aim is good. Honestly, you want to go with a part in your life because you just don't know. The past is a also an unknown country, really. I mean, books
Yeah,
only tell you
yeah,
so much. You don't.
yeah.
Nobody knows what the vibe was like in 1881.
Right, right. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I could see, yeah, in my own past, I could see actually 1994 being a good time. I could see, yeah, kind of like leading up to 2000, but right around that time, that's the sweet spot. Like coming out of college, working a job that I liked. Yeah, I could see that being a do-over year.
Not complaining about now too much. The
No,
economy's
no, no,
tanking in
no.
Japan, but whatever. Or it's not. Nobody even knows. Anyway, inflation is nuts right now. So,
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
yeah. But how about deserving people? Paul Driscoll, does he deserve his trip into the Twilight Zone?
Does he deserve it? Well, he's got to learn those lessons clearly.
He
Clearly,
kind
he's
of
got to.
leaps into it, both feet
Yeah.
first. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so yeah, really not much of a question there. I forget the name of the dinner companion.
I'm
That
not sure they gave him a name, to be honest.
maybe they didn't. Yeah, I'm looking at the IMDb list.
Yeah,
And yeah,
I'm doubling on the wiki and not quite coming to a.
Hanford. Maybe that was him, played by Robert Cornwaith. I think that
Okay,
might have been it. Yeah.
that could be the case.
Um, that guy 100% deserves to get an earful
Yeah.
from. He doesn't really travel into the Twilight Zone. He's just hearing a counter opinion that he probably would not have heard before. But he absolutely needs and deserves to have that. Um, Abigail, poor Abigail.
Oh, hold
She
on.
doesn't.
For the
Yeah.
trivia, I did not do Robert Cornwaith. I
Yeah.
think that is where I looked at his thing and was like, there's not a whole lot here. But he
Oh, okay.
was the expedition leader in 1951's The Thing from Another World, so that's kind of cool.
Whoa. All right. All right. Poor Abigail. She's an innocent here. She doesn't deserve the trip into the Twilight Zone. You know.
Yeah, at least
Sorry.
Mary Steenburgen gets to ride off with Christopher Lloyd in a steampunk flying locomotive in the end, right? Where
Who wouldn't do that? Yeah.
Abigail's just like, what happened?
Right. 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 Yeah, I
And now
think
I
Paul
don't
could have
look
been a
like
little
such a
more.
great teacher with
Yeah,
half
yeah.
my
I think
kids injured.
Paul could have been a little more sensitive to that and tried to leave things better than he found it. But anyway.
Yeah, but I guess he learned enough to be like, I really need to get out of the past because I am not doing this well. I'm not doing this right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
But, Paul learns the most important lesson of all, which is that it's not about our yesterdays, it's about our tomorrows. It's like you can't change the past, therefore you have to work for a better future.
right. So I guess here's where I'll stick in that little epilogue, since it's that quote I think does it, right?
Yeah, right?
Incident on July afternoon, 1881. A man named Driscoll came and went, and in the process learned a simple lesson, perhaps said best by a poet named Lathbury, who wrote, "Children of yesterday, heirs of tomorrow, what are you weaving? Labor and sorrow. Look to your looms again. Faster and faster fly the great shuttles prepared by the master. Life's in the loom, room for it. Room, tonight's tale of clocks and calendars in the twilight zone."
Oh, I
So
love that.
yeah, I was like, that's a
I
good
love
quote.
it.
I mean,
It is. It is.
I've been saying it over and over again, but one thing where you definitely tell the quality of the Twilight Zone after our run in with, not run in, we enjoyed some of it, but one step beyond, it was like performed technically better, not
Yeah.
written as well, and without the weird charm. So
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
let's trip a meter this one then. As usual, 0 is low, 5 is high. Although some people feel like only a scale of 10. I don't care if, as long as you tell me you're doing that.
um, I'm gonna give this a 4 because it's trippy only in sort of like the emotional impact that Paul learns his lesson. Hopefully, he works for a better tomorrow. That is now his newfound goal in contemporary 1963. Um, Abigail's trip into the Twilight Zone is impactful, but it is short lived. She's not going to have answers now that Paul is gone. But I think the reason that I wouldn't give this a full 5 is because Paul got exactly what he should have expected. It's not like there was some total curveball that came at him that altered his entire perception of reality. No, he built a machine to do exactly what he wanted it to do. He was successful in that. And what he learned along the way is what he probably intuitively knew all along, and that Harvey was trying to tell him all along, like, you really can't change the past. And if you do, you might screw something up worse. So it's, in the end, it's really like the logical end to the thing that he came up with. So it's not trippy, like weird. It's just trippy that, well, nobody that we know of has invented a time machine yet.
Time Machine does get a full 5 for me. The Time
Really?
Machine set, the set of the
Oh,
Time Machine.
just
That
going on the
set.
aesthetics, the machinery. Okay, that is a
The
5. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
episode for me gets a 3. I just wanted to distinct that
Okay.
because one of the things, Obsolete Man, I think I did give a 5 or a 4.5, probably a 5, and part of that was based on the set. So here I'm like, this is a 5
Nice.
set, episode is a 3.
Okay. Yep.
Partly because as a guy watching all of these in order, the Twilight Zones, they've done it a few times. You've got
Yeah.
I don't remember the Lincoln Russell Johnson one, but it had a title,
Yeah.
Walking Distance.
You did. Yeah.
Paul Driscoll does a much better job traversing the past than Marty. We got to give him that because Marty does change the past. He gives himself a limp.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Good
Right.
job, Marty. So at least Paul
Right.
didn't manage that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Marty, of course, accidentally stepped into the past as well. But yeah,
Sure.
and we've already had a proper time. Yeah, Russell Johnson had a time machine once, and then other time he just steps back. So he did it both ways.
Yeah.
So anyway, it is kind of like this one is, Twilight Zone's been there syndrome a little bit for me, which is, but it's done
Mhm.
okay. I did not think that this one would have been a 25-minute episode by any means because it's got that 15-minute prologue basically, which does work well.
Yeah.
You get all these different
Yeah.
things that allows what would have been the 25-minute episode to breathe just a little bit, not to where we have to pad it out.
Right.
um
Right.
Again, next week's The Parallel, which I've already watched, and it is a good episode, but I did write in my notes, this scene just happened twice. This conversation just happened twice. That is
Yeah.
called
Yeah.
padding.
Yeah, you do suffer from that a little bit.
Because I
Yeah.
was about to say, oh, I was about to say it for this because I watched them pretty close to each other. I was like, oh wait, this one doesn't do it. This one does at least like have, all the scenes fit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's good. Um, if you got a final thought, throw it out. Otherwise, I guess tell me what's up in the Mission Log universe. This actually is next week.
Oh, right on. Yeah. I think we hit all the points. I think we got there as far as my notes on this show. I think the performances are really solid. I think it's this is the kind of story that really speaks to me. It's like got a strong what if. You can put yourself in this character's shoes pretty easily. Like if you had the power, what would you do? But what is the lesson that you gain from that? All of this plays out well, and yeah, it's familiar ground, but this is the familiar ground that I come back to the Twilight Zone for because it does it so well.
Well, I
You
can
know.
sense your flavor, right? Because you're here for Willoughby, and in the future, your name's on for Cliffordville. So,
Bingo, bingo. That's it. That's it. I mean, I like stories that remind us to not overly romanticize the past. That here and now is actually the most important thing, and next most important to that is what you're doing to prepare for the future. You know, so but all that said, one should learn from the past, and that's maybe that's a lesson here that he's not getting is that you actually have uh, the hard won learned moments from the past. And if you erase those, then nobody learned from those hard moments.
he's got fantastic experience for the present now. Well, the present of 1963, but
Exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah. All right. So, mission log. Yes, we are recording Nothing Human, which then would be out next week. So, as of the drop of this episode of Time Enough, Nothing Human should be coming up. The one in which Balana gets attacked by a cool rubber monster. So, can't wait to talk about that one. And Mission Log Live, we will have already wrapped up Discovery season 5. So we should be doing an episode that will wrap up the series. Probably one to wrap up the season, one to wrap up the series. We'll see. It kind of depends on how the conversation goes. And then, of course, everybody who has not yet checked out Talking Ted, Ted the series is hilarious. It's on Peacock, and Mike and Jessica have been killing it with Talking Ted. And we just got the news today that a month from now, July 1st, we're going to have a drop of season 2 of Prodigy on Netflix. So
oh,
everybody
good.
who is,
Yeah, because we thought we
yeah,
might just get blindsided and like there it is, but
yeah, no,
now
no,
people
no,
can
it is.
plan.
It is official now. So check out Prodigy season 2 and watch season 1 if you haven't because it's so good. So check it out, people.
Actually, I would like to ask, are they just going to throw the whole thing out at once or do it week by week?
I wish I knew. I hope that they'll do week by week because I think the show really needs to be watched and appreciated that way. But Netflix is notorious for just dumping everything all at once. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have word on that soon.
Yeah, in Japan, all the shows are on like different streaming services. It's like Netflix here is different than Netflix there, which is different than Amazon Prime here, which is different than
Of
Amazon Prime there. It's very
course.
confusing. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah. That's why, hey, if you got expressvpn.com/mission log, then that can resolve a lot of those issues.
yeah, and I've gotten my two into Ted. I need to watch a third because the
Nice.
third one of those is coming out. This I didn't know it existed till Mike told me. Yeah, we're doing a Ted show. I'm like, oh, you're just going to
Yeah.
do 7 episodes on the movies? I said, no, no, there's a TV show. Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, it's good. But that's kind of the problem with streaming is that there's so much content and it's hard to find the ones. You hope that the cream rises to the top, but it's just hard to find all the good stuff because there's so much. And there are a lot of good shows right now, but Ted is one of those that I think you wouldn't expect to be a really strong show, but it's a really strong show. So go check it out.
Yeah, that's actually one of the few comedy things that was popular in Japan, probably because there's a quote unquote cute bear, but
Yeah, yeah.
so people would
I
put on
think
their bags and stuff.
I think Seth treads that line really well by creating like cute crude characters. You know, he has figured that out. I've had a few friends in my life who tread that line very well. I think Seth has definitely figured out a way to make that with mass market appeal too.
All right. As for us, this another podcaster over at Podcastius on Patreon. Definitely check out this week's Films and Filth, where you are there talking about Das Boot.
Yes. Oh God,
So
that was
Das
epic,
Boot,
man.
boat. Okay, let's
Boot,
try
das
and do it.
Boot.
I just want to say boot. I like, well, it's because of what, the Euro Trip movie, right?
Yeah, right.
Where
Yeah.
they have to trick out Das Boot.
Oh God, that was so funny. But yeah, that was epic, man. That was yeah. Thanks for having me on the show for that.
Right on, and thanks for bopping in today.
Sure
I'm
thing.
gonna go travel through the mists of time somewhere at the most convenient moment.
All right. Well, don't change history too much, or this show may have never happened.
Mm. Okay, that's the pause I can spot. I just want to look just for 2 minutes of things that you were interested in
Yeah.
uh
Let's take a
coming
quick
up.
look here.
I think you mentioned Space 1999, which would have to
Yeah.
happen in the next 2 weeks, I think. That's the one without
Okay.
Landau too. That's an interesting choice.
Oh yeah. All
It's
right.
Catacombs of the Moon, which could be next week
Yeah.
or next week if either of those work.
Let's see. Okay, next week. Okay. Next week might be best because I'm going to be away the 19th, 20th, 21st, so I might have a bit of a crunch on the 17th, 18th. Um, Actually, no, you know what? Uh, let's aim for the 17th because I won't have as much prep time for the live show because disco is
Okay.
over. I'm just taking calls.
That should
So,
be that should be perfect. That's our regular recording time for that podcast, actually.
oh,
So,
good, 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 good. Okay.
and it works out because tomorrow we're doing the AB Chrysalis, so we'll just skip ahead next week and then roll back and do that. So
Okay. All right.
be
So
slightly out of
Catacombs
order.
of the Moon, and that'll be on the 17th, and that'll be 4:30 my time.
Correct. I'll of
Cool.
course bop out the message to the other folks and just make sure about that. But that's no, the normal time we do it. So unless something
Okay.
weird's happening, that should be fine.
Cool, cool.
And the films and filth list is somewhere on my computer. Oh yeah, it's in a Microsoft Edge browser for some reason. I have a few lists in Microsoft Edge, which I don't use for
Yikes.
anything except for those couple of lists.
Oh my
My
God.
new computer is just like weirdly disorganized. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna put everything in downloads because I tried to move my photos. I put in the
Yeah.
normal photos things, and now it wants to back up everything, which would be good. But it's like you are now 100% storage filled. You don't get emails anymore. I'm like, I didn't even ask you to do that. So I think if I put it in downloads, it won't try and automatically back it all up.
Right, right, right.
Um, oh, we got some time before
Okay.
Films and Filth has anything, which is 50 Shades of Black. And then I think I actually put your name down for Spice World.
Oh, fuck yeah, man.
Okay,
Hell
and I
yeah.
I need to get
I'm
one. I'm going
there.
to get one more guest for that.
Okay.
Maybe we'll just call Brian or get BC on for that. Because there has to be 5 people so we can work out who each Spice Girl correlates to if the
Yeah.
people
Oh,
on
I
the
love that.
show. So it
That's a
needs to
great
have
plan.
I can't invite any. It's got to be 5 guys deciding which Spice Girl they are. So that's what I'm
Absolutely.
working on. But that'll be
Absolutely.
like probably a little bit before Vegas is when I'll bug you about that. So
Okay. That'll work.
um
Hey, you'll appreciate this. I just registered for the Julian's auction coming up wait, is it next weekend? Middle of next week, 12th, 13th, 14th. And then a bonus auction on the 15th. So the first one is Disco and Disaster, and it's a bunch of like sci-fi props and stuff, disaster movies, sci-fi movies, all kinds of stuff, including like props and costumes from Alien and just a bunch of shit. And then the bonus auction on the 15th is all Irwin Allen
ooh.
storyboards. So yeah, I've got my eye on a lot in those two auctions. So we'll see what happens.
I'm seeing if the price has changed on. Okay, it's still safe. I'm trying
Yeah.
because of credit cards. I'm trying to wait till the 16th so I can put it on the next cycle. But
Hmm.
yeah, I've got like half the disaster movies of the 70s in my Amazon cart at the moment because several of them are on
Nice.
sale. So,
There we go.
and Con
There
Air,
we
which I
go.
haven't seen since release night.
Oh wow. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't like it when I saw it then. I think I might like it
Yeah,
now because I just seen The Rock. I was like, I want to see cool Nick Cage, and he just shows up as
sure.
pure weird Nick Cage, which now I want, but maybe I didn't want in 97 or 8 or whatever it was.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Okay, I will say
All right,
bye-bye
man.
to our
Thank
patrons
you.
and hit the record.